and take a vagabond dream of a vagabond fool.
Hi, I'm Lisa. This is Mark, and we're the Vagabond Dreamers.
We're standing here in Gozo on beautiful Malta, overlooking the harbor after having spent 2 weeks in Tuscany. And our trip to Tuscany was really an amazing combination of nature and what man has done to it. It led us to thinking, which is more impressive? So we're going to kind of debate that over the course of this video and let you decide. We started in Lucca. What'd you think of that?
Lovely Lucca. I was so enraptured with Lucca. It was both quaint and majestic at the same time. Quaint with its little villages, but also its big villas. Rolling hills of olive trees and just so many vineyards. It was an absolute treat for the eyes.
So anybody would want to live there, but when people did arrive, they built this walled city in Lucca that has been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, occupied by several different empires, and it's still occupied today. Over 6,000 people still live there. We walked around the city. There's cars and motorcycles mixing in with the people in the very narrow streets. A magnificent structure. It got me to thinking about why it was even built. As beautiful as it is, as functional as it is, of course it was built as a way to wage war and to protect from war, and that's going to be a recurring theme. Is all these beautiful things that man built during this time have sort of a dark or tragic side to them as well. After spending a few days in Lucca, and we'll return to talking about the villa in a little bit, we traveled up to Cinque Terre, which is on the Italian, or at the start of the Italian Riviera. Pretty sweet, eh?
Cinque Terre was everything that I thought and hoped it would be. It's a series of 5 small coastal towns. We only made it to the first one, but we could visually see each one of them, especially when we hiked up to a church at the beginning of the first town. The hike was incredible, as most hikes are, but not all, but visually stunning. So Cinque Terre was a lively, vibrant coastal town, and I can only imagine that the other 4 towns were as well. I wish we'd had more time to spend there.
If you've been watching our other videos, you'll be shocked to know that we hiked in Cinque Terre. No, there's always a hike. And it was really spectacular and a difficult climb, at least for me, because it was really straight up the side of a mountain. And we were watching guys working in the fields, the vineyards, straight up the side of the hill. They had built these, they weren't even terraced necessarily, they were just built on the side of this hill. And again, another testimony to what man can do when nature challenges us. The fact that they were able to build this enormous church in all these towns and do agriculture was really something. From Cinque Terre, we moved down the coast and came across Carrara.
And that was really an accident. As we were traveling from Tuscany to Cinque Terre, we were traveling past the mountains, some of the mountains in Italy, and both Mark and I were kind of amazed that they looked like they were snow-capped. And we know that there are snow-capped mountains in Italy, but not this close to the beach, we didn't think. So that piqued our attention, only to find out that in Carrara, these snow-capped mountains were actually marble-capped mountains. So of course we had to veer off our path, and we headed up the mountains into Carrara to find out more about this mining of the marble, and it was exquisite. One of the things we noticed was like everything was this white Italian marble. We walked into a restroom right there at the base of one of the mines, and the bathroom, from floor to ceiling, from fixtures, was completely done in white marble. It was just stunning.
It absolutely is one of the most magnificent natural things that we've ever seen. It also, again, shows what man can do. We were driving up and we saw this, what looked like a broken down steam shovel sitting on the side of this cliff. And we thought, oh, they just abandoned it there. But no, it was working. It was a working steam shovel. They were still ripping off the side of this mountain for the marble, for building and for art. The great pieces of the Renaissance all came from these mines. What's sort of funny is that the signs were saying the Carrara caves, and we're going to go in the caves. And we were looking around and we're trying to get there, and we got turned back several times because it turns out there are no caves.
No, caves in Italian actually meant
Quarry.
We found lots of quarries, so we were successful. We just were misunderstanding what the word meant.
Much to my delight, there was a statue of Mazzini, the father of Italian nationalism, up in this remote village made of marble. After we left there, we headed down to the beach at Massa.
And the significance of that is, first of all, we needed some beach time, but at the same time, Massa is right at the base of Carrara, and they incorporated all of this marble in a lot of the structures in Massa. Right outside the public beach, there is a massive just marble architecture. It was not designed to be anything specific, but man, was it beautiful.
So leaving there, we were heading to Florence, and we stumbled across Pisa.
Pisa.
Pisa is the guide. Was it a guide? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Anyway, we don't usually do the touristy stuff, and you would never see us posing with the Leaning Tower.
No, we don't do that.
We
don't do it.
But a lot of people were. And it is really something to see it in person. We've all seen pictures or videos perhaps, but to actually be at the base of this and understand what a beautiful structure it is, and also that it's leaning quite dramatically and still has not fallen over. Another one of these.
With a little help from man.
A lot of help from that, right? But gravity is undefeated usually. We'll see what happens. But that was a really fun little visit. We headed down the coast to a town I really wanted to see, which was Livorno, which is known as the Venice of the West in terms of the fact that it's built on a big series of canals. And we had a little disappointments, and a couple of the places we wanted to see were closed because it was Sunday. But it still was amazing to see what they had done. But you know, it definitely was not in the greatest of shape, and it was a little disappointing until we walked down to the marina to try to find some lunch. This is the marina at Livorno. The alleged, oh wait, there's a hot woman. I should go say hi. Hi.
Donata.
Donata?
Vámonos. Whatever the language is. Stop. I don't know.
Marina was beautiful. Of course, I mean, that was the appeal, both nature-wise, but also historically. It has a purpose. It always does.
And what they did in building this town in and around all these canals, and the way that they move goods around, is the biggest port on the western coast of Italy, and it was busy there. Then we headed over to Florence for our stay at a winery, but we used that kind of as a base to go into the city. And anything that you've ever heard about Florence, it's only a tenth of how great it actually was.
I wasn't sure what to expect from Florence. I'm not a big city person, but I, of course, had heard wonderful things, and it absolutely did not disappoint. At one point, we walked up to the Plaza de Michelangelo. It's a nice elevation, and from there you can see all of the old city and beyond.
The Domo that we stopped in, this huge cathedral, at the time the biggest dome in the world when it was built. Fabulous arguments between two of the architects that there are fun stories that we can't tell here. And also I went to this church called Santa di Croce, and it really drove home to me the point that we were standing in the birthplace of Western culture. This is where the Renaissance started, and the proof of this is in the church, the Santa di Croce, are the tombs of Machiavelli, Michelangelo, and Dante, all right next to each other. Tombs for Napoleon's relatives, and many, many more artists and authors of that period. This was it. This was the center of it. And all the magnificent statues and art that filled the place. But don't forget about the gardens that were.
Well, that was the other piece of Florence. Is, of course, it's built on a river, as man would do for the port issues and the travel and whatnot. But Florence has incorporated the rivers and the city into places for people to absolutely enjoy. There were benches and gardens and statues and places for people to picnic, and you saw that throughout Florence. And it wasn't just the tourists. People would go to lunch from their workday and have their lunch in all of the parks and the gardens.
We spent a day at the Boboli Gardens that were built by the Medici, because the Medicis built everything.
Seems like that's true.
And hundreds of 1st and 2nd century Roman statues, along with fountains and mansions that they called their summer house throughout. But this incorporating all these wonderful elements of nature into something to show the opulence and the wealth of that family was really remarkable.
They did a really good job at that.
And there's Lisa up ahead. She's always up ahead. When is she not up ahead? But we sort of run out of adjectives for Florence. Fabulous, spectacular, unbelievable. I should get out a thesaurus later today, because just about every place we try to go to just seems to stun us even more. It was everywhere. But again, you have to think about these bankers and what they were doing, and the way they took advantage of labor to build these monuments to themselves is I think you have to at least think about the dark side of that from time to time. Hey lady, come here often?
No, but you do seem to be following me an awful lot.
Well, yeah.
It's a little creepy.
Well, Boboli is truly remarkable, that's for sure. But what about the gardens, then the summer house that Napoleon built for his sister?
Napoleon? Is that who built that? I guess when we got to the garden and I took off and you went one way and I went the other, I got really immersed in the actual garden of it. Many of the flowers that were around there didn't look real. And I followed rivers and landscaping and blooming trees, and I was truly just captured by the beauty of the actual garden.
Yeah, it was Napoleon built this estate right outside of Lucca for her sister. Really something. He incorporated many things from his empire, including an entire garden built in the Moorish style that made you think you were in southern Spain. The outdoor theater built into the side of a hill. Just no expense was spared. And the house itself, which they called their summer home, looked like a palace. Our last stop was in Siena. We went down to this ancient city. So a thriving city built well over 1,000 years ago and still functioning.
Still thriving.
Still
Not
thriving.
just functioning, thriving. Tourists and locals both use Siena.
So it might be hard for us to determine whether the most magnificent thing was nature or what man did to it. I think we're going to leave you with the words of the people who owned the villa that we stayed in. These were two young people who had high-paying finance jobs in Brussels, and they gave it all up to buy this convent, kick the nuns to the curb.
Oh, they did not.
They did too. Anyway, and remodeled this thing, and this was on some land that Lorenzo's family had owned. But just listen to their words, and then you'll get a sense of how much the people who live there love it, and how much we did too.
Yeah, we're good.
All right, here we're staying here in Tuscany at this Holiday. No, this is not a Holiday Inn. This is a fabulous villa, and I'm here with the owners. Tell us who you are.
I'm Laurent. I'm Belgian, but have been living in Tuscany for 7 years now, and this is my husband.
Lorenzo, half Italian, half Belgian. I also grew up in Belgium, where I met my beautiful wife. And a few years ago, we decided to buy this former convent to, well, originally start a farming project, making olive oil and wine. But since the house was so big, we also started.
It was a little bit too big for just the two of us.
So this was a former convent.
It was, yes.
I was telling you the other day, I had this feeling when I walked in the door that the hair on the back of my, going to Catholic school for all those years, there was something about this place. No, it's very beautiful. And you were telling me the church had to come in and do some kind of things to.
Yeah, to.
Well,
how do you call it?
so the house was originally built as a private residence by a bishop of Lucca, who was called Giovanni Volpi about 200 years ago. And then when he passed away, he gave it to the Sisters of Santa Zita, who's a very important religious order here in Lucca, and they turned it into a convent. So it was a convent for about 150 years, up until we bought it from the nuns. When we visited it, it was still a working convent with a church. The big living room had all the benches and the altar and the confessionals and everything.
So how long did this restoration project take you guys?
A long time.
A long time.
It took us a long time, but the main reason is that we bought the place because we fell in love with it, and we had a history with it, and we didn't have a clear idea of what we would do with it in the first place. So the land on which the house stands used to be part of my family's estate, but was sold to this of Lucca 200 years ago. And so for us, when the nuns decided to sell it, it was a unique opportunity. We thought it's meant to be, it's a sign. We have to do it. It came just about at the time when we wanted to leave corporate life and move to the countryside in Italy.
So this area belonged to your family prior to 200 years ago?
Exactly.
Oh my.
Exactly. It was part of the family house's estate, but the estate was subdivided and sold off in bits and pieces over the centuries. And so being able to bring them back together felt like a sign of destiny.
Wow.
So we bought it originally thinking, well, we'll farm the land and then we'll see. And then bit by bit, as we started welcoming guests, first as a bed and breakfast, that's when we started to understand how we wanted to remodel the house. So it took us a few years of living in it, welcoming people in it, to know exactly
What you wanted to do with this space.
Exactly.
So you were in the corporate world before you did this.
Yes.
Yes.
This is a real step up from that, I guess. Right?
It's a very different life.
Well, it is a challenge.
So you, in addition to the olive oil and the grapes, and you make your own wine and you make your own olive oil, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then what other things come off of the farm?
Pretty much everything we can do with what we have in the farm. So it can be from making limoncello with our own lemons to jam with whatever fruit is on the property.
Laurent was just in her beautiful vegetable garden where we make most of the vegetables that we use in the restaurant. There's a plan to have animals someday maybe, but one step at a time.
You don't seem like the one step at a time people to me, but this is awesome.
No, but we're already making such a big step.
Yeah, very big step. It's a beautiful morning here in Tuscany, this region in northern Italy that includes Florence. We spent the last couple weeks here looking at some marvelous human accomplishments and some wonderful things that nature has provided. And it's been the debate between us as to which is more impressive.
Clearly there's not an identifiable winner, or it would be me. Because the connection between man and nature is so intertwined, it can be both beautiful and tragic. I'm thankful we got to learn about the tragedies and the beauty as well. We're headed to Malta next.
I'm Mark. This is Lisa, the Vagabond.
Take a vagabond dream of a vagabond fool. I ain't too proud to beg, but I'm playing it cool. I can do the time, I can do the walk when I'm walking with you.
Cool. I'm sure the nuns sprayed a little graffiti just to mark their territory.